This is Bible teacher Nelson Walters. We know the Antichrist is going to assume power over the world. We know that. But how will he do it? And what weapons will he use? The books of the Bible that have the most to say on this topic are Daniel and Revelation. Daniel was written 2,500 years ago, Revelation 2,000 years ago. And although they give us the essential facts of what's going to happen, they can't give us specifics about technologies utilized, etc. But the scriptures can hint at it. But it requires a strong knowledge of Scripture to put it all together, to put the scenario that the Bible is presenting on the end times into perspective. So today, a shout out goes to Jason Lawrence, a member of this community, for his assistance in researching this video idea. So let's start at the beginning. In the earlier of the two books, Daniel, we can look at what it says in Daniel 8:23 through 25. And at the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their limit, a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. His power shall be great, but not by his own power. And he shall cause fearful destruction, and shall succeed in what he does, and destroy mighty men and the people who are the saints. By cunning he shall make deceit prosper, and in his own mind he shall become great. Without warning he shall destroy many. So that's the passage. When it speaks of his rising, or how he comes to power, it says he understands riddles. That's the clue that we're given. Now, we've discussed this before on this channel. How does someone come to power? By understanding riddles. It's not riddles like what makes you start on red and stop on green, a watermelon. Well, that's humorous, but it isn't that kind of riddle. I don't think the Antichrist comes to power that way. That's how you come to power on like Sesame Street. The Hebrew word instead is kidah, meaning difficult questions. The Antichrist understands the answers to difficult questions. Well, how might he do that? As we've suggested before, one major way is through artificial intelligence. I think the most likely meaning of this passage is that he understands and utilizes AI. He also has assistants. His power is not his own. In Daniel 11:39, we read, "He shall deal with the strongest fortresses with the help of a foreign god." Well, who is this foreign god? Other than a fallen angel. Perhaps a fallen angel posing as an alien. And what does he do with the power and AI knowledge? We read it before. He destroys mighty men and the saints. He kills. And as we keep reading, he does this with cunning, deceit, and without warning. It will be a stealth attack that the strongest of fortresses don't see coming. Let's keep all that in mind. To figure out exactly who the strongest of fortresses might be, we should look at Revelation 17. The strongest fortress is likely the one world government that reigns over the kings of the earth prior to the Antichrist taking power. The Bible calls this government Mystery Babylon. Here's what it says about how the Antichrist defeats them in Revelation 17:16. "And the 10 horns that you saw and the beast will hate the prostitute." That's the one world government of Mystery Babylon that comes before the beast. "They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire." I think most of us think about that fire part at the end and concentrate on some sort of nuclear weapon as the only thing going on here. But that is not what the passage says. There are 4 things, and 3 of them take place prior to the fire. The government, or at least its capital city, is first made desolate, then naked, then its flesh is devoured. These things all happen before the fire. Desolation is a term used by Jesus in Matthew 12:25, when he said that every kingdom divided is brought to desolation or abandonment. This is the first thing that takes place when the beast revolts against Mystery Babylon. It's a kingdom divided. And the kingdom is made desolate. People leave the cities. Then they are naked, and finally their flesh is devoured. Only then is the fire poured out. See the order of how these things work? So we know that the beast likely uses AI and the help of a fallen angel to attack Babylon with cunning and deceit and without warning. And this attack seems to desolate cities, leaving people without means and devouring their flesh. Only after that is the fire used. So nuclear weapons don't seem to be the first step, if they're used at all. So conventional guns, bombs, missiles, troops may not figure into this World War III scenario at all. Biological and computer viruses might be the likely weapon of choice instead. They are the ultimate stealth weapons after all. They're invisible weapons. This is very important because the Antichrist will be vastly outgunned and outmanned by Mystery Babylon that rules the world. Think about that. Mystery Babylon is going to control all the nations of the world. How is one guy going to suddenly assume power? And this one guy, the Antichrist, is not going to want the government to catch on, or they'd destroy him immediately. So stealth is called for. COVID taught us a lot about how a virus can damage a country. It damaged the American economy, spread fear, killed a lot of people. If the Antichrist is thinking of using a deadly virus as a weapon of war, he could weaken Babylon, drive people out of cities, wreck their economy, and wreck their bodies with the virus. The first three things that we read that the 10 horns and the beast do to Babylon, and only after it was weakened would he attack it with conventional or nuclear weapons. So how would he do that? He can convert a pathogen into a terror attack without requiring a biolab full of PhDs. Recent genetic engineering advances, combined with AI, have dramatically reduced the skills, money, time needed to engineer a catastrophe. In the future, bioterror will no longer be in the realm of governments, but in the realm of terror chieftains like the Antichrist, probably working underground. Again, you might ask, if the world is controlled by a one-world government, how is this possible? Wouldn't they detect him? MIT researchers asked undergraduate students to test whether chatbots could be prompted to assist non-experts in causing a pandemic and found that within 1 hour, the chatbot suggested 4 potential pandemic pathogens. Can you imagine that? The chatbots helped the students identify which pathogens could inflict the most damage and even provided information not known by experts. The students were offered lists of companies who then could assist them with DNA synthesis and suggestions on how to trick them into providing services. And these results are using the primitive AI we have today. Imagine what will be available at the end of the year or next year. And so you say, well, won't Mystery Babylon have some kind of tremendous surveillance system that would know all this? Maybe they will, and maybe the Antichrist is doing this right now in preparation. The man who will be Antichrist could be preparing things now, and we wouldn't even know it. Neither would Mystery Babylon, which hasn't formed yet. So what about scriptural support for something like this? I mean, this is kind of a supposition on our part that this would happen. It's kind of a guess. But what does Scripture say? We know that a pestilence is a major sign of end times. Jesus mentioned this as a sign of the beginning of the birth pangs in Matthew 24:7, King James Version. And it's mentioned at the 4th seal, which is likely the time the Antichrist rises to power. Look at Revelation 6:8, the 4th seal, and see what it says. Then I looked and saw a pale horse. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed close behind. And they were given authority over 1/4 of the earth to kill by sword, by famine, by plague, and under the authority of the beasts of the earth. So the beast kills by these 3 methods: sword, famine, and plague. And notice one of them is plague or pestilence. So we know then that pestilence happens under the authority of the beast. So it just about has to be a bioweapon of some kind. How else can he control plague? So, won't Antichrist need to protect his own people first? That's a logical question. Won't it be obvious if he was inoculating them? Now, being a completely evil person, he could easily choose who becomes immune and who doesn't, even among his own people. He may not protect most. He may only protect a few, and he could make it look like some kind of flu vaccine. A weaponized virus would also need to incorporate an immune suppression gene. Did you know that COVID had such a gene called ORF8 that reduced early symptoms, facilitating spread by asymptomatic carriers? For a covert attack to be successful, the virus would also need to be released, probably not in the country of origin, but in the target country. That way, the Antichrist could blame the biolabs in Mystery Babylon's country where he was attacking. Do you see how all this would work together to be covert, deceitful, and he could strike without warning? Do you also envision how AI would be so useful in designing something like that? The one who understands riddles, like the Antichrist, can easily make maximum use of this, even using our primitive AI today, as we just discussed. Recall that early in the COVID pandemic, nations weren't able to care for their infected patients. Pictures of tents being set up in New York City are still in my mind's eye. Thus, for maximum disruption, the second thrust of the Antichrist's aggression could be a cyber attack on hospitals, maybe disguised as ransomware. Again, the trick would be to make it seem as if the attack was originating outside of the Antichrist's home country. Mystery Babylon might not even recognize it as part of a two-front, synergistic attack of biological and computer viruses. You know, my mind's eye of the Antichrist at first is more of a terror chieftain than he is of a world dictator. He becomes the dictator later, but he's the chieftain, it appears, first. Now, avoiding obvious military targets would even further enhance the illusion that, he wasn't in the midst of a World War III. He wasn't trying to take over. The Antichrist might falsely claim that his own systems are under siege too. Misdirection can be very effective strategy, and deception is what the Antichrist will be best at. It's what he's all about. Did you know Bill Gates has set a date for the next pandemic? I find that interesting also. It appears he has. Click right here to keep watching and discover what Gates and the World Health Organization say about the timing of the next virus. It's scary. This is Nelson, and I'll see you there.